Hi, first graders. Mr. Askelson here. It is Monday, May 18th, 2020, and we are on week 8 of distance learning. I hope that you all had a really nice weekend. We're in a kind of a really exciting place in math right now. It's one of my favorite things to do in math, and it's talking about shapes and lines and angles. And when we talk about things like this in math, we are talking about geometry. And it's really a fun part of math that you can use a lot of your creative side. There is obviously math involved, but there's a lot of creativity and things that you can do with geometry. And today we're going to start off with kind of the basic part, talking about squares and rectangles, and work on student pages 635 through 638. Do as much of it as you can. So when you look at this picture right there, you can see it as a bunch of shapes. You can see it as colors. But there was a famous painter called Mondrian who used shapes and colors to do his art and became really, really famous and successful at using these things, geometry, in his artwork. So when we look at these two shapes, squares and rectangles, squares and rectangles are closed two-dimensional shapes, which means if this was like a fence, there would be no way to get into it or out of it. Same with a rectangle. And two-dimensional means that they're flat. Okay, so closed, flat shapes. They have straight sides and vertices. And you can see what the sides are. A vertex is the corner. And if you have more than one vertex, it's called a vertice. So squares also, the sides have 4 equal sides in length. So 4 sides that are equal with 4 vertices. Rectangles have 2 sets, or the opposite sides are the same length. So 4 sides, opposite sides are the same length, and it has 4 vertices. So a little bit different in its description between a rectangle and a square. And basically the difference is square has equal sides, rectangle has 2 sets of equal sides. So let's practice a little bit of this. Okay, here's a square, here is a rectangle. And so we just said, how many sides does a square have? 4. How many corners does a square have? 4. 4 sides, 4 vertices. How about in the rectangle? How many sides? 4. And how many corners? 4. And notice that the corners on rectangles and squares are square corners. We call those 90-degree corners. So let's check our work and see if we're right. We are. 4 sides, 4 vertices. Now we're going to look at something that is an actual object, like a book or a window. And we can say how many sides on the book, or I guess maybe it's a box of granola bars. 4 sides. How many corners? 4 corners, or 4 vertices, so 4 and 4. On the window, now it depends a little bit if you want to say, I'm going to count the outside of the window, or I'm going to count each one of those little rectangles inside. We're going to go on the outside and say there's 4 sides and 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices. Let's see if we're right. We are. All right. Last thing is count and write how many squares and rectangles you see in the robot. So let's first of all count up the squares. Let's see, we've got 1 here, 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there. So I believe that we have 5 squares. Now, how many rectangles? Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like 7. Now, if I just was to check my answers to see if I'm right, I'm not. Well, which rectangle? I'm right on the squares, but what rectangle did I miss? If I look back, and some of you may have seen it right away, here's a rectangle right there. Here's a long, skinny rectangle right there. Here's another rectangle, and those three rectangles make up the body of the robot. So there's another one there. So when we look at this, we're not looking at just 7. We are looking at 8. Let's check. And we already saw that that was correct. So sometimes it's real easy to miss one of the rectangles because you're looking so closely at the parts that you miss the whole part of it. So 5 squares, 8 rectangles. So as you're working today on those pages, use this definition down here to help you with squares and rectangles. Maybe look up some art online. There's a lot of really, really cool paintings. And I bet this is some of the stuff, you know, a lot of times when it comes to art, after someone's already thought it up, people look at it and say, well, gosh, I could do that. I could have done that. And the difference, of course, always is that the person who thinks it up gets credit for being the artist, when other people who copy it afterwards, it's still fun to do and fun to draw, but maybe you could come up with a new way of doing some art that uses shapes and be as famous as Modrian at one day. So hope that helps, first graders. Have a great day.